Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dirt Road with Rick.
And Mike and our 140 acre farm here in New York.
Love it. Love it.
It is a great backdrop.
It is.
Welcome to the Dirt Road, everybody, for another episode. And Mike, boy oh boy, have the dynamics of this election changed, huh?
Oh boy, did they, right? So Biden is out and Harris is in, and all those Democratic primary voters got pooped on.
Nah. Just remember, though, we have no constitutional right to a primary.
No, you're right. You're not wrong, but still, I mean, it's gotta sting a little, right? If you're on that side, like, you know, it's gotta sting just a little bit. Like, wait a minute, I voted for this guy. What the hell?
Yeah, I would guess. But, I mean, at this point, they really didn't have a choice, right? Because the infrastructure's there for the Biden campaign. She picks it right up. The money.
Yeah, $80 million
game.
that was tied directly to her.
Sure.
That couldn't be used otherwise, you know.
And the ground game is there, and it would.
She steps into like a turnkey campaign at this point, you know.
Yeah. And their only other option was a convention of chaos, and that wouldn't be helpful at all.
Well, I mean, everybody got chaos, right? You got Biden's cognitive decline, you know, whether you like the guy or you don't like the guy. The decline is pretty obvious at this point, and they're having to admit that. And that, of course, that's going to hurt her in this, is that, you know, how long did she know about his decline, and how long did she cover it up? Right? And that's already being spoken about. Even
She
by
knew as long as all
media.
of us did, which was the last 3.5 years.
Yeah.
You know.
But that's already resonating. You know, even like CNN, MSNBC, like those like more mainstream leftist media groups, you're seeing that's being asked. They're not giving her the pass that Joe got for so long. You know what I mean? You know, that President Biden got for so long. You know,
What pass is that? What are you talking about?
Like the media pass, where they really didn't challenge him on anything until very recently.
Well, you think they're challenging her?
I think they're asking questions they never would have asked when he was there. Right? So like they're asking about how long she knew about his cognitive decline, and they're putting, like, you know, they're not hitting her with hard questions, don't get me wrong. And they're not asking her directly, but they are asking the questions, which is a big jump from where they were even a year ago, 6 months ago.
That's true. I mean, they're in a position where they can't avoid it, obviously, right?
I mean, they have their own viewership, right? They have their own ad revenue they have to generate themselves, and you know they've taken a big stinking poop on that for a long time too. I mean, how much you know viewership has MSNBC or CNN lost over the last 8 years or so of this stuff?
They'll probably pick it back up though around the Democratic convention. But in what ways do you think this changes, or does it change anything overall?
I think it's a hard road forward for them, right? So we talked in the last video, I think, about the VP picks and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's the first big hurdle she has is her VP pick, because you have half of her base is pro-Palestine, anti-Israel, and then you have the other half of her base more mainstream conservative Democrats or just centrist Democrats that are pro-Israel. So you have to kind of marry those two groups together and get them all unified under your flag. That VP pick becomes that much more important.
Yeah, and she was definitely on a different page than President Biden when it came to the Israel Gaza war, and 100%. She's got to toe that fine line now of not
she's
completely opposing him, but yet creating her own path. But in what ways do you think this may change the dynamics of the race itself?
Well, I think it makes it a tougher race for Trump, right? So maybe not, definitely not unwinnable for him at all. I still think he wins, honestly.
Yeah, if I had a bet on it.
I'm betting he's going to win. But I definitely think it closes that gap maybe a little bit, but just a little bit is enough, So I think it definitely closes the gap now, because you have all those people who are either going to sit it out, or maybe vote RFK. They're now going to say, okay, wait, we have a normal candidate in the seat for president now. It's a black female, which, checks the DEI box. They all can virtue signal with that and feel good about themselves. So I think she's going to bring more voters to the polls on their side. So I think it definitely is going to close that gap a little bit with Trump's campaign.
Yeah, and RFK's numbers have tanked since.
Well, yeah, because RFK was drawing a lot of the dissatisfied Democrats who were like, we can't vote for this guy again, and they were going to RFK. But now that she's in the race, they have a more mainstream Democrat who can actually be supported in the race. They're gonna shift to her. Yeah,
and I wonder how much longer RFK can sustain this, or if he's going to pull out soon.
He's going to have to. I mean, how much money is he spending trying to maintain a race where he's? I mean, would he really capture maybe a state at most right now? I think.
I mean, that would be a miracle if he did. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's not. I get it. I get his platform. I get it. He's a likable guy. He's a smart guy. He's not.
Very smart.
I say he's very far left for me, for my policy, feelings. He's way far left from me, but I get what he's saying overall, and I think that he would be a wrecking ball for the deep state establishment.
Oh, he certainly would be.
So he would definitely check that box across the entire. It's rare do you see a candidate that can check a box across the entire political spectrum. you know, and he can do that with that deep state stuff.
And this changes. It's amazing because I remember back in 2020, around January or February, talking with my son and saying, "There's no way Trump can possibly lose this election unless something crazy happens." And then a month later, boom, COVID, something crazy happened.
And mail-in balloting.
And I was literally thinking the same thing, after that debate, like everybody else was. The only way Trump could lose this election is if something crazy happens. And here we have something crazy happen. Hasn't happened since '68. The candidate pulling out.
Yeah.
Right before the election, and similarly with LBJ, when he pulled out, his Vice President Humphrey becomes the nominee. Biden's Vice President becomes the nominee. You had a third party back then too, George Wallace, who of course garnered far more support than Bobby Kennedy is garnering right now.
Right.
But there's still a lot of similarity there. But I think it changes the dynamics, and in these swing states, because Trump we saw pulling some more minority support than he had in the past. Younger support than he had in the past.
Numbers more, yeah.
And I think there's going to be a big crack in that, maybe even a damn leak. Who knows?
I think so. Here's where I think Trump's real support's going to come from this time. That's going to carry him over for the win.
What's that?
Young voters, minority voters, right?
Yeah, but you don't think that they're going to, he's going to lose some of that support now?
I don't think so. I think he's going to keep gaining it. Because here's why they're switching, right? So, the minority voters, especially the black community, their communities are being turned over to this wave upon wave of illegal aliens coming in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all these motels, hotels, whatever, being taken over, they're being pumped in. And these communities are losing support that traditionally was theirs to deal with or to utilize, and now it's being pushed to other people and they're being pushed aside, and that resonates, I mean, look at the influencers within that community. Amber Rose, spoke at the RNC, and she's come over to the MAGA side, and, she's just one example of a great many across that spectrum that have come over and come publicly out to.
But how do we know that that's not just anecdotal? I mean, how do we know that that's really any kind of a seismic shift?
I think the sheer numbers of people switching is what shows you the seismic shift.
Because I mean, we heard the same thing in 2020. Trump's getting more minority support.
Yeah, but that was more fluffed, and you didn't see raw numbers saying it. I didn't see raw polling that was saying that. I didn't see like what I'm talking about personally is what I see on social media, what I see on Twitter or Facebook, any of the social media ones. What I see on social media is these accounts that were very pro-Biden up until very recently. All of a sudden, now they're MAGA accounts, and they're not full-throated MAGA people, but they're saying, listen, this guy's policies worked. This guy had the country on track. Things were good. I had more money. I felt more secure. The world was at peace for the most part, or was going towards peace. People remember that, and they're very much invested in that.
And that's Trump's advantage. Yeah. We said that in a couple of videos ago. If he can focus on that message, which with Trump you never know, but if he could stay focused on that, people do remember 4 years ago. And all former presidents, their popularity grows the longer they're out of office. I mean, that's just
sure, because you forget the blemishes and you remember the beauty.
Right, and absolutely. If Biden pulled out the other night, and a couple of nights ago, and that speech he made on national TV was, to me, that was disastrous. I mean, he had an opportunity there, I think, to have his popularity rise by 15, 20 points. If he would have come on, reflected over the last 50 years of his life, been a little, gracious, a little more like a farewell speech or just something, but he turned it right within 30 seconds. It was, we have to prevent a dictatorship, we have to prevent the democracy from it, and it turned into a campaign speech, and I thought he blew an opportunity there to get his popularity back. If he would have just come on as, the grandfatherly guy who's saying goodbye, and I understand it's time to take the car keys away from me now, and I'm passing the torch, and just focused on that. And, BS and spun his last 50 years in office as a wonderful success.
He's on the wrong side of every issue in 50 years.
But he could have spun it. Any political speechwriter could spin it. And he had that opportunity and blew it. Because I got to tell you, Mike, I was watching that speech, and that's what I was expecting. And within 30 seconds to a minute, my reaction was, what a dick. Just what an absolute dick.
You know what he did, right? He showed his true colors. He showed the narcissistic dirtbag that he is.
But he turned it into a campaign speech, and it
because that's to him is everything.
But it was so improper,
Yeah, but look, I mean, I honestly don't think the guy really left of his own volition. I think he was forced out. I think Obama, Pelosi, the heads of the party, got to the donors and told the donors, listen, you got to pull your support, otherwise this guy won't listen, he won't get out.
Or the donors got to them and said, either you get this guy out or we're going to stop.
Well, no, I'm sure the donors there were donors before there were donors announced. There was $80 million before that was in the public, in the media, of donors saying we will not donate to the party until this guy's gone.
Right. So
publicly. So I mean,
but that's
they
not a
got
secret,
the message.
Mike. He was forced out. I mean, nobody thinks he did this on his own volition.
No, I mean they're calling it a coup.
He wasn't George Washington surrendering his commission to Congress and saying I'm going back to Mount Vernon. That's bullshit. I mean, the media is trying to spin it like that.
Of course they are. He's the father of America. He's gonna, reunite the country.
But it was nothing like that. Everybody knows he was forced out. He knows he was forced out. But what I'm saying is he blew an opportunity.
Without a doubt.
He could have made his popularity rise, which she'll feed off of. I mean, if his popularity went up,
it would carry her numbers as well. Absolutely.
Of course,
because they're inextricably tied together, whether she likes it or not. And as much as she's trying to make her campaign about her now, she was the border czar. She was his vice president. She was directly involved in his policies in one form or another. She was there with him every step of the way.
And 2 weeks ago, she was running on that, right? 2 weeks ago, she was running on their record.
This is the Biden policy. This
so
is
it's
the
going to
Biden
be hard
ticket.
for her to shift.
Yeah.
But he blew an opportunity, in my opinion.
He did.
Where he could have presented himself in a much more positive way. But he had to go right for the jugular.
Because he's a narcissist. He can't help himself.
Yeah.
He got his ass handed to him on that debate stage. I mean, handed to him. And for me, the clearest thing that came out of that debate, like beyond Trump won it, whatever, Trump didn't have to do anything. He could have shown up and answered one-word answers to the questions and still won that debate.
Yeah, I was surprised at how disciplined Trump actually was. We already talked about the debate, but he was disciplined there, just waiting it out. The look on his face when Biden went on that whatever you call it wasn't even a rant. It was just some gibberish, and then ended it with "We beat Medicare," and you just looked at Trump's face, and in his face, you could tell what he was thinking. He was thinking, "My God, this guy's handing me the election. I better just shut the fuck up and let him."
Yeah.
And he did. And then he came back with actually a pretty quick one-liner. He said, "Yeah, you beat Medicare. You beat it to death."
Yeah.
But that was basically his only sarcasm. But just focusing on the dynamics of this race now, I think Biden had an opportunity to really give his vice president a good advantage if he had come across differently in that speech.
Sure.
But he didn't. And now we have a whole new race, and who knows how it's going to turn out.
I think that with thinking that Biden would do something like that, it's like, expecting a fish to ride a bicycle. It's just not natural to him, and he would never do it.
No. And
I think he showed his true colors in that speech. Look, you had the Dark Brandon speech. Remember that one with the red backdrop, and he was all imposing looking, and I was like, oh, hello, dictator. It was like the most dictatorial speech ever.
Right. But
and this one was worse than that one.
But this was the man who claimed he was going to bring the country together and unite. And again, that's where poll numbers come in. If you're uniting people, you have a 60% approval rating, not a 60% disapproval rating.
Exactly.
So and listen, Trump's not exactly Mr. Unity. We get that. He says his own bombastic shit now and then.
Yeah, he's divisive. Yeah, he can be.
But the problem with Biden is again, I think he hurt his own. And maybe he was angry. Who knows? I mean, maybe he was just angry at the whole thought that he had to pull out. There's no way he
I'm
wants
sure
to.
he's gonna be angry. Yeah, like there's no way that guy was giving that seat up. No way.
No, well,
he had to be. He had to be
forced.
You? Would I? I didn't want to run for office the first time. No, that's not really necessarily true. But no, look, if I'm at a point where I'm losing my marbles, I'm getting senile, dementia, whatever the hell's going on, Parkinson's, whatever it is that's happening with him, and I've got my closest advisors, which would not be my family, because as well-intentioned as they are, it's not the best people to have around you in those kinds of circumstances. You have to have people who are willing to tell you the truth no matter what. If it means hurting my feelings, by all means, hurt my damn feelings, but make sure we're on track,
Yeah, but I don't think Biden's had those types of advisors.
He doesn't. He surrounds himself with people who are going to just, narcissists need that constant affirmation, right? So they're going to surround themselves with those yes men, those people that are going to give them that constant affirmation. And obviously Dr. Jill wasn't giving up all that power. She was enjoying it too much,
Well, of course. Yeah,
Hunter doesn't want him to go away because that's how his business model is based on.
But I'm talking more about those who are governing with him. Great presidents in the past have surrounded themselves with varied opinions. I mean, you take somebody like FDR, he had everybody from conservatives to outright communists in his cabinet, in his inner circle, in his quote-unquote brain trust, and he let them argue amongst each other, and that was how he arrived at pretty good, solid decisions. Trump, everybody says, Trump wanted yes men around him all the time. That's not true. If you read, Trump always asked for arguments in different sides, and both sides, before he decided on things.
Of course.
So, they make him out to be a narcissist, and maybe he is in some ways, but I don't think Biden's advisors have done him any good over the last 4 years, because it seems to me every decision he makes turns out bad.
Look, you look at his cabinet, right? So Biden wins the 2020 election. I still don't believe that. But we'll leave it at that. But Biden, whatever, he picks his cabinet, right? So I remember looking at the people he's picking for his cabinet when he first picked them, and I couldn't believe how ridiculous this was. I'm like, you are picking the worst possible people you can for these positions. Like, these were the most ineffective, virtue signaling class of people you could ever meet. Like, Rachel Levine, the dude with the long hair that pretends to be an admiral.
But it's not a cabinet secretary.
I know, but it's just it's symbolic of everybody else. Pete Buttigieg, I mean, come on. Blinken, Anthony Blinken, who's got all these years of experience in government, but everything he's touched has turned to complete crap, along with Victoria Nuland and the others. It's like he picked all these people that were just
But at least
awful.
at least people like Blinken were accomplished people in Washington. They threw the guys like
I don't
Buttigieg
know that accomplished and being in Washington go together in the same sentence.
People like Buttigieg he threw in a nothing position, Secretary of Transportation.
And he still made a mess.
I thought that he actually did pick, again, for Washington. This is what they do. He did go back and retread some old timers that have been around for a long time.
Sure.
Listen, Trump made big mistakes when he picked his cabinet.
His cabinet was awful. His first cabinet was awful. Other than General Flynn, I thought General Flynn was a great pick, but unfortunately he got torpedoed. Listen, General Flynn, if you know the man, if you know his history, and you look at his military history, the guy came up through those silos, those intelligence community silos. So he knows that community. Like, he knows the NSA very, very deeply. He knows all those different communities and how they operate very, very well. He knows where the bodies are buried. So, of course, the Obama campaign torpedoed his ass before he even got in the door with Trump's campaign, because they knew that would be the guy that would undoubtedly uncover everything and bring it back to him. So they torpedoed him. So I'd like to see Trump, let's just imagine it's November, Trump's won, he's picking his cabinet. I would like to see, General Flynn is like a national security advisor or some other kind of position in there where he can kind of help deal with that intelligence community that's gone so far off the rails.
Now, speaking of that, I think that that would, because we are talking about the election here,
Yep.
Just like Trump in 2016 put out the list of Supreme Court nominees, right?
Yes.
I think he'd do himself a good service. He put out a list of probable cabinet secretaries.
Well, he's been
Maybe
announcing
not
some.
with the position itself, but just coming right out and saying, this person's going to be in my cabinet, and maybe announcing somebody like a Bobby Kennedy if he drops out of the race, or a Tulsi Gabbard as more of a, intellectually diverse.
We talked
group.
about this thing in another episode. I think I mentioned it. I would love to see Bobby Kennedy given a special prosecutor status on the Department of Justice with the Trump win, and allowed to just go after pharma and the intelligence community for the assassination of his uncle and his father.
Something
I
like
would
that.
love to see him heading up that declassification and exposure project.
But what I'm saying is I'd love to see Trump announce his quote-unquote team, and say, these are the guys I'm going to go into the White House
I agree. I want to
with.
see the team also.
Because he's had plenty of time to vet a lot
He's
of
had
these
almost
people.
4 years to kind of build out a new administration.
He's
basically.
had 8 years to vet these people.
Well,
and
yeah,
so
I mean,
he's had a long time.
But he had to learn some lessons after
So
2020.
when he came in last time, what did he do? He puts a guy like Rex Tillerson, who's a corporate mogul. Right?
Oh, God.
He puts the swamp
Betsy
in.
DeVos,
And, claiming he wants to get rid of the swamp.
Fix.
So I think that would be a great idea for him to do, is to just put out, this is my team, just like he did with the Supreme Court justices. But back to the dynamics of the race. Do you think this changes any of the dynamics in the actual swing states? Because that's really
absolutely.
what matters.
Absolutely. The swing states are what matter most, right? Because
Yeah.
we know what states are kind of going to flip, which ones mostly are.
Yeah, Alabama's
there
going
may
to be
some
red and California's going to be blue. But
Things are very dynamic right now in the world, and especially in the country. So, I mean, I would not be surprised to see some surprise flips in there. I wouldn't, lean Democrat states flipping Republican would not surprise me in this race.
like,
Minnesota, Michigan, other states that might flip red. I think it'll be close. If the Democrats keep those states, it'll be very close.
maybe Michigan, but the Republicans have been talking about flipping Minnesota longer than the Democrats have been talking about flipping Texas. So it's not going to happen. I mean, the last time they won Minnesota was 1972.
I don't know. Like I said, I think I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised to see it, because I think the American electorate has changed vastly over the last, 8 years or so, because they've seen these. If you look at Trump's first presidency compared to the last 4 years of Biden, which Harris is directly tied to his last 4 years of Biden, no matter how much she tries to distance herself from it, she's tied to it. So it's basically, you're comparing this election as basically 4 years of Trump versus 4 years of Biden-Harris, right?
Right, and that's how Trump has to make sure it's framed. If he lets them frame it any other way, he's in trouble.
He's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
But so you have those two comparatives, right? Those two contrasts. Now, when you look at those contrasts, even Democrats, when they're looking at their contrast, maybe they're not going to admit it publicly, But they know that under those 4 years of Trump, they were getting paid more. They were paying less for things. They were getting taxed less. Things worked, and they worked better. And the country was moving in a better direction. And there was a lot of peace. And there was a lot of other good things on the horizon.
That's objectively true.
Right.
I mean, that's not even debatable.
Right, no, I'm not saying it is. So when you compare those two, I think the American electorate is I think people in big groups get stupid quickly, right? I do. The sheeple mentality thing takes hold. But I think individually, people, and especially Americans, are very, very smart people. We're problem solvers. By and large, I think Americans are very good problem solvers, right? And I think they see the realities of things. Whether they want to admit it or not, I think they see the realities of things. So I think you're going to see a shift in the American electorate that's going to surprise quite a few of these pundits and these strategists and everybody else. Maybe. You know, because, I mean, look at Harris's campaign right now. The nonsense they're coming out with. Their ads are just awful. You know, the stuff they're putting out is just nonsense. And, like, you know, they're missing the mark. It's so hard. And, like, I'm not talking from my own personal feelings, because obviously I'm not voting Harris, I'm voting Trump. But beyond that, like, I'll look at things objectively, but also just from the accounts I follow that I see. Because I follow accounts from all across the spectrum. I look at accounts from all across the spectrum. I look at all mass media, just to kind of have an idea of where things are and kind of look at the playing field, look at where the battlefield lies, look at how things are laid out. And what I'm seeing is that shift, that seismic shift in the American electorate. So Kamala Harris's ads are dropping, and I'm looking at the comment sections on these ads on, like, Twitter or Facebook, wherever, and what do you see? You see all these comments, and these are from Democrats, mind you. You know, people who are supposedly in their base, who are like, oh, you know, you got forced on us, or, you know, you're horrible.
Mike, I got to disagree with you. To me, that's not the real world. I mean, those are people who are motivated, and no matter what side they're on, they're motivated enough to, you know, start typing on the phone. These are not the people who can be swung. You know, anybody who's
you're not swinging them, and that's not even it. That's not even like you're swinging
either
them.
direction. I mean, these are people who are already so passionate about something that they're ready to get on their phone, and I just don't think that represents a broad swath of the American people.
I see, but I do. I think it's like a microcosm, but I think it's a big microcosm. So I think it's something that kind of actually gives a very good. What I'm talking about is across the spectrum, right? Not just that one particular post or that one particular person or whatever. I'm talking like, you know, across the entire media universe. You're seeing like this shift in the way people are approaching these things and talking about these things, and the way they talk about her. Like, listen, Obama, love him or hate him, right? The guy had the energy. He did.
Of course he did.
He had that momentum. He had that energy. He drew you in when he spoke.
Of course
he made you feel like you're a part of this thing, and we're going to make this thing go, right? Same with Clinton. Same with Trump, 2016 and 2020. But, you know, they draw you in. They have these charismatic, like, you know, personalities, and they're bigger than life, and they're able to make you believe in their cause. Yeah. And you could be the most conservative person in the world.
I'm not arguing that.
No, I know.
I'm just arguing that I don't think what we see on social media or cable TV is in any way a true representation of the way average, regular American
what
people
I think
feel.
it is, and this is what my point I'm trying to get to is, Biden never had that at all. Harris has less than Biden even had in that regard.
We'll see.
I think it's pretty much, you know, clear. And Trump does have that. Yes. So I think the disparity is so dramatic already. That alone would account for a pretty seismic shift in the electorate.
Of course it does. You're 100% right. I mean, listen, there was no such thing as a Biden groupie, right? You know, something like that. Trump has his supporters, and they're not going anywhere.
Biden does have groupies. They're called NAMBLA.
So the 47% of the American population that loves Trump, they're not going anywhere. It's not going down. That floor is there, and it's not going anywhere. Biden never had that. The people that were voting for Biden were people who were voting against Trump.
Against Trump, right. Yep.
Those same people are going to vote for Harris, but I do think she may bring in more. I do think that she may energize some people that there was no way
she'll pull more than Biden would have. Oh, yeah,
first.
no, listen. I think she'll definitely pull more votes than Biden would have. You know, I don't think Biden got 81 million votes last time, not even remotely, but that's a different story. But I do think that Harris in this race, even coming into the race as late as she is, right? We're in July, almost August. Race is only a few months away to Election Day, and Harris is having to, you know, jump in the middle of this thing and kind of get momentum. You know, that's a hard thing to do for anybody, for any candidate.
But the inverse is true also, right? It doesn't give the Trump team enough time to really come up with the negatives and to do the oppo. You know, so it does work both ways, and she's still going to be fresh, you know, as the election comes along.
I think she gets maybe a little bit of insulation for that, but I still think there's enough there that they're going to easily hit her pretty hard. And like I said, all you have to do is, and we talk about this earlier, right? Just tie her to the Biden policies. That's what you got to do.
Right.
She's part of Biden's team, part of the Biden policies, and that's it. She's done.
Right, and if
But
Trump,
she's still going to pull more votes than Biden would have, without a doubt, hands down.
100% she will.
Without a doubt.
But that's Trump's job, really, right? If he really wants to win this thing, he's got to tie
her
to
to that.
force her to go against her own boss and her own policies.
Right.
Because we said this in the last video, she's got that tightrope that she's got to walk.
Yes.
She's got to try to create the image of herself, and at the same time, she's got to stick with him because she was part of that team.
Yeah, absolutely. She's got to be able to say that, I was supportive, or I like these policies. Like, if she was smart, which she's not, but if she was smart, maybe she has some smart campaign staff, which I'm sure some people on her campaign staff are smart. They should be doing a mea culpa thing right away, like this week, right now. Do a mea culpa. Yeah, we were part of this administration, we tried this policy, that policy, whatever. But obviously those things were, going in directions we didn't foresee, expect, whatever. She's got to own it. Own the losses. Own the hits.
That's tough to do in politics.
Own the losses, I'm telling you. If she owned those losses and she owned those hits and she said, look, we're going to shift policies now. We're going to go in this direction and bring out like a more centrist kind of policy, she'd gain a far, far bigger chunk of the independents and those people on
and
the
that's
fence.
all about spin. And that's where I was going before when I was talking about, with Biden and with Trump and the way that they were handling the race. It's all in the way you spin things. You had said the American people are smart. Of course the American people are smart. We're smart. We're American people. Spin doctors are smarter. These guys are professional bullshit artists.
They're propagandists,
They can say things that are, true, but not true. So in Biden's farewell address, he mentioned that he's the first, I don't remember how he phrased it, but basically he hadn't started any wars, which is true. He said America is not in any war now. That is true. It's objectively true. We have not gone on any new military adventures, but the world is so far more dangerous now, so more at war now than it was 4 years ago.
Because of us pumping money into regions to funnel wars.
That's
proxy wars.
So he can say out loud, truthfully, hey, I started no wars. So could Trump, right? They could both say that. But what he leaves out, obviously, because he has to, is the fact that under his watch, we're on the precipice of World War III. The Middle East is in flames. Eastern Europe's in flames. Asia's, basically a powder keg waiting to go off between North Korea and China. Their ambitions.
North Korea, China, and Japan rearming because they have to.
And the other spin is with inflation, right? So Harris and Biden can say, truthfully, inflation is down. And it is. It's down. But what does that mean? That just means the prices aren't going up as quickly as they were going up 10 months ago.
Still going up, though.
Right, and that's where Trump...
Because you're still in an inflationary model.
Of course.
Yep.
So you can say, truthfully, inflation is down. It's down to 3% now. But that doesn't mean that the prices have fallen. Prices are 21% higher than they were 3.5 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's where you have to try to counter the spin doctors. I don't know that Trump has the discipline to do it, but we'll see.
I think he's got a great campaign staff. I think he's got some very smart people around him. He's definitely got much more loyal people around him, right? And you can see that. You can see that in how he kind of took the RNC, right?
Yeah.
Mike Watley and Lara Trump in there now. You can see that, and look at the RNC. Like the difference in the RNC this year compared to last year. Without Ronna McDaniel in there.
Years ago.
Yeah, without Ronna in there, right? Well, even just last year, because you had Ronna and then now this team, right? So Ronna was taking, the fundraising, first of all, was in the basement. Nobody wanted to give her money because they felt like she was wasting it, and she was. She was wasting on nonsense. And then all it was these, parties they were having where they all slept, chilling back and told you what a great job they did while the whole country burned.
The party
I'm sure you guys made money, but everybody else is getting screwed. Hello?
The party is definitely Donald Trump's party now.
Without a doubt.
No doubt about it.
Without a doubt.
If he wins the election, then that's sustainable for a generation.
At
if
least.
He loses the election, we talked about this in the last video.
MAGA's done.
Yeah, it goes back. It goes back to the the Mitch McConnell type Republicans that they were. The Democrats are really the ones right now who are having to try to identify themselves. So you got Biden running around claiming he's a moderate. Harris is not running away from her left-wing views, at least not yet. I'm sure she'll have to. I mean, she's going to have to pretend like she's going to the center at some point.
Well, the Democrats have the problem, right? So, it's like the whole Kamala problem they had, right? They brought Kamala Harris in. She's a DEI hire, right? Biden says, I'm going to pick a black female vice president, blah, 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 right? The whole, virtue signal thing. And he does. And now you have her. And now she's the vice president. He's not running again. You can't skip her. A, there's 80 million tied to her to run in the race. And B, if you skip over her, you've just basically admitted your entire DEI policy thing is a complete, disaster, which we all know it really is. But they're not going to admit that, right?
Underestimate her at your own peril, Mike. I mean,
No, I'm not underestimating her. Look, I said, I think in a previous video, she hasn't lost a race that she ran in.
No.
She ran for DA in San Francisco, won a couple of times. She ran for Attorney General of California and won. She was appointed for the Senate and then won her race for the Senate. You know, she's obviously knows the political game. You know, love her or hate her for how she got there, whatever. She knows the politics game.
Yeah.
She's not, you know, I don't think she's. Let me put it this way, okay? I think she's probably dumb in some sense, but not stupid, right? So I think she's probably her own worst enemy. In other words, I think she's very good at maybe framing things in her own mind of what she sees herself as or what she wants to be, but maybe not the best at getting herself there. But she's smart enough to bring in those people who can get her there. So I don't think she's
that's politically astute. That's not
yeah,
dumb.
yeah, but and dumb in a sense of, you know, the policy she advocates for, like the Marxist crazy stuff.
Well, they're dumb to us, but you know, like I was saying upstairs,
Marxism
you know,
is dumb unless you want to be dead. You know,
half the country doesn't think like us.
Cradle to the grave government does one thing and one thing only. It hastens your arrival at the grave part of that whole sentence.
Yeah.
You know?
But again, half the country doesn't agree with that statement.
Half the country needs to wake up to the reality, go read a book about Soviet era
now
and everybody else.
And that's where I think, you know, our side's problem is. We don't do a good job of explaining. We do a great job of arguing, but we don't do a great job of convincing people as to why, you know, why do you think there was such a thing as a Reagan Democrat? That man was a genius at communicating. That man was able to get...
communication is key.
Yeah, that man was able to get people who had been Democrats their entire life, and not just a few, not just a handful or a segment on Twitter or something like that. It's about millions, right, of people who... Yeah. There was a thing called a Reagan Democrat. Oxymoronic on its face, but it was real.
Well, look, during my campaign, right, I had to talk to, you know, it's a big district, a lot of people, and you're talking to people from every political stripe you could imagine. I had the libertarian endorsement, you know, and I by and large like libertarians for the most part. I think some of the policies are a little bit extreme, but I get it. I get where they're going. They're all about freedom, so I respect it. And I talked to plenty of Democrats, though, of all kinds. I had, you know, everything from a Democrat socialist up through like your modern day, like, you know, centrist, normal, everyday Democrat, right? And I talked to lots of them, whether over social media, email, in person at events, or some of the speaking engagements I had were actually at like Democrat type clubs where they were like just predominantly, you know, Democrat civic associations, that kind of thing. But I didn't shy away from those events because I felt like it was important that I speak to everybody, because if you're going to represent, you're going to represent everybody. So you should be able to speak to everybody. And I did well in those environments and those events. And it wasn't because I pandered or I changed anything I thought. I stuck to my principles and what I believed was right and true.
I didn't say that anybody shouldn't.
No. I'm just trying to make a point. So, because I could stand there and do that, I was able to actually hear their honest opinions and their honest reasoning behind some of the things they felt about, you know, policy, and why they felt this policy or that policy that I thought was far too left maybe was important to them. And I understood it on the face of it. But what I came to understand is that not so much the centrist Democrats. I think they generally just want a steady ship. You know, I think they're like most centrists. They just kind of want a steady ship, you know? But like the far left Democrats, what I came to understand, well, for them it was much, much more about, like, you know, this vision they had of a kind of like world, or this vision they had of a more like accepting world. And like, it's a very beautiful thought, right? It really is. Like I've said this before, communism on paper is this beautiful thing that everybody's equal and everybody works and everybody provides and everybody's okay. And but the reality is people aren't evolved there. We're just not, as human beings, are just not evolved there. We're not ready for that kind of, you know, system at all, even remotely.
I'm not advocating that we are. All I'm saying is that half this country does not agree with the way you and I think.
And that's why I'm explaining the way I think. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm explaining it to all of you, okay? So if you're on that side of it, bear with me. I'm not attacking you. I promise you.
Will they be watching it? That's a problem also, right? Is that we don't expose ourselves to other points of view.
Well, that's just it. I want everybody. I want everybody to take a ride down a dirt road with us, right? I want you guys to come on board and just take a ride down a dirt road, and let's talk about it. Let's talk about whatever it is. And we're not going to attack anybody or call anybody names necessarily. You know, people do dumb things, and we'll call out dumb things, but it doesn't matter which side they're on. If they're doing dumb things, they're doing dumb things. You know, this is about an honest conversation, civil discourse, coming back to a place where we can actually discuss these ideas and figure out what actually would work and what actually won't work. Because we don't need extremes on either side, because it just doesn't end well that way. The centrists more or less have it right and where things need to be to kind of balance the ship and keep it moving forward. And that's the whole idea. Make America great again is not about some, you know, right-wing fascist government, right? That's just not what it's about. It's about bringing back agriculture. It's about bringing back manufacturing. It's about making the country solvent and strong and stable, and taking care of our citizenry.
Mike, like we talked about, I think on the last one too, it's actually a lot of it's not right wing, which is what's ironic, right?
It's very centrist. Very centrist.
Some of it is even stuff that the left has been arguing
left of center,
for decades.
Some of it was left of center. Some of it's left of center. Some of it's center. Some of it's right of center. But it really is centrist.
I mean, it was the left that was arguing against illegal immigration up until about 10 years ago.
Well, yeah, because at that time
it hurt union workers. It brought wages down. That was more their argument. It was more the corporate Republicans that were kind of waving them
until the Tea Party really got a hold, right? The Republican Party was mostly the corporate party, right? And then when the Tea Party kind of came and they got a hold, it kind of broke that hold a little bit of the corporate. They're still there somewhat. And then over since Obama, we've seen a shift where the corporates kind of went to the left, and now we're kind of going to the right with, where we're picking up more of like the middle class America and the everyday people, where that used to be the Democrat Party.
And that's why I never understand why people, refer to Trump as right wing. He's not a right wing. He's not an ideologue at all.
Yeah, but
he's no ideologue in any way, shape, or form. Trump is somebody who's a pragmatist. He has no political ideology. None.
No, I think he just looks at what works.
Right, exactly.
He just looks at what works. He
and that's what attracted me to him back in 2016, is that he is not ideological, because the ideological Republicans are just as bad as the ideological Democrats, because they believe that in the end, no matter how many people it hurts along the way, the ends justify the means. That's the idea of an ideologue.
That's exactly what happens in communism. That's people who die.
Exactly.
And that's why it's a bad idea.
And I don't think Trump is anything like that. I don't think if you ask Trump to, what the Trump doctrine is, or what his political ideology is.
It's problem solving.
Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't be able to put it into some nice little neat white paper or something. And I think that's what attracts a lot of Americans to him.
Well, yeah, because it's problem solving, right? So Americans are problem solvers. I mean, we're that's what we do. We solve problems. We go out, we figure things out, we get them done. And I think that's very, very much, not that there's not problem solvers in the world, other countries or whatever. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I'm talking about Americans. And Americans, I think, are very, very good problem solvers. And when you look at social media postings, or even some of the Substack, or some other places like blogs and vlogs and places you go where people put up their information, everyday Americans talking about the problems they see or their solutions for those problems. And they're brilliant. Listen, they're great ideas, and it's coming from both sides. Albert, during the campaign, right? My friend Albert was part of our campaign. Albert's a brilliant guy, and he says some really wonderful things at times. And one of the things he said that always stuck with me throughout the campaign was, look, neither side has a monopoly on good ideas. And he was absolutely right.
And neither side has a monopoly on idiots either.
Oh, no. We've all got plenty of those going around. Listen, the politics is full of grifters and liars and people just trying to get wealthy or powerful on your butt, and that's 100% true. You have those people who kind of trying to attach themselves to you so they can ride your tailcoats forward, And there's a lot of it, and it happens. And I didn't make it that far in the race, or even that big of an impact in the race, where I would have seen at a level probably much, much worse than, but I saw enough to know just how ugly the lay of the land was going forward.
Listen, politics is definitely ugly, and I will say again, what attracted me to Trump, and what still attracts me to Trump, in some ways at least, is the fact that he is devoid of a political ideology.
He's a problem. I want the problem solver. That's what I want. I want the problem solver.
And I don't think, people call him a liar. He's not a liar.
No.
He's a liar. He's a liar like a 16-year-old girl's a liar. Greatest party ever. The whole school was there. They all loved me. That's the type of liar Trump is. Biden, to me, if you think of his lies, just even with the Ukraine war, we were talking about this another time, just the lies and the lies and the lies, those are dangerous lies. And I get, all politicians do that, but I still think Trump in some ways is outside of that. Am I calling him, is he a priest? No. No doubt about it.
You don't want a priest, though.
No, of course not. He's got his faults, but the main thing that attracted me to him is the lack of political idea. Because to me, ideologues are dangerous.
I agree.
They're just dangerous people.
I agree.
And
no matter which side they're on, they're absolutely.
I don't think Biden's an ideologue, but he's surrounded himself with ideologues, and he follows.
He's an ideologue, and he's an ideologue in his own, ideology, the Biden ideology.
His ideology
he's the greatest.
Is say what I got to do.
He should be given the most money. He should have everything he wants. He should just do what he says.
Right,
and
he could do more push-ups, and he can beat, kick Corn Pop's ass and all of that stuff. Listen, so this is a guy who makes up stories all the time.
I hope that somehow, some way, in the next few months, Corn Pop appears on the stage. And both these dementia-ridden old men can have some kind of duke it out thing. That would be epic.
So I think this would be a great screenplay. We read The Return of Corn Pop.
The Return of Corn Pop.
Anyway, You want to wrap this up, bud?
We're gonna wrap it up, but you know what? The return of corn pop is definitely gonna be a thing. So keep an eye out. At some point in the future, we're gonna find a way to make that a reality.
Let's start.
It's too good not to.
I think I want you to be corn pop. All right, like, comment, subscribe, like,
Please.
whichever order you want to
Please.
put it in. Just do it because.
Yeah.
By the way, do you know we're the fastest growing podcast on YouTube?
Nice.
We have increased our subscribers 7-fold.
Wow.
In the last 5 or 6 days.
That's awesome. How
We
many
went from
cancels?
0 to 7. That's an increase
Oh, we're
of
up to 7.
7-fold. We are flying, buddy.
All right.
All right.
Well, it's
We'll see you
all
all
7
next
of you.
time.
Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Nice talking to you.
You too, brother.
All right.